Hi, welcome to Advent of Refactoring Day 18. Looking at some Django stuff today. In this listing view here, we want to check that we're only getting the published events, we're only getting events which are in the future, order them in a certain way, then building some JSON data based upon that. Nothing too complicated here, but some of these pieces could be moved out to be more generic and reusable. Let's first of all go look at the event object here, and we can see the class definition. What we're going to do is override the object's query set. So first, if I go to the file browser here, I'm going to create a new file. This isn't necessary, but it's just our convention of how we do this. So in the events folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call this QuerySets.py. In QuerySet, from django.db.models, import QuerySet. I'm going to say class event QuerySet. QuerySet. So I've now subclassed QuerySet, so I can then start adding my own things to it. In models then, I can then say here, objects equals event QuerySet. And it hasn't figured out how to import it because Visual Studio Code is being slow today. So from dot QuerySets import event QuerySet. There we go. We can't just do that. We have to say dot as manager, just because Django likes to make things confusing. We've now got our own event, our own objects thing. So in here, we've got event.objects. That's this object here that we're talking about. So now we can start to move some of these bits here into that query set thing. So let's try getting this first one here. Filter published equals true. So maybe we should call this live. Sounds like a reasonable thing to call it. So in our query set here, we can create a new method for that. Def live self. And we're going to say return self.filter published equals true. There we go. So we've just moved the logic from this one place we're using it into the objects place. Next, this filter by date time. Let's cut that, and a better place would be, we should call that in the future, say. And then in here, def in the future self. There we go, and we say return self.filter, and date time we need to import, so I'll just add that in here as well. We can find that one here if we want to, just grab it from the previous place, import it there. So we've now got event.objects.all that are live in the future, and we can also do the same for that one as well. So dot order by date and name. So we can put that here. So def or order by date and name. Self return self the order by date name. So we've now moved all of those ones out there into sort of separate pieces. We could then combine them all if we wanted to. So we could have a combination one here. We could say def future live events self. And then we could say return self dot all dot live dot in the future dot order by date and name. So you can have like some helper methods here, future live events, and then here we could just say events equals event.objects dot future live events. So we can move all of that sort of filter and logic out there. So this section here, could we move this into the query set as well? Yes, we could, but I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to do that. I think it might be better to have this as a method on the class itself. So if we were to take this JSON data stuff here, we're going to go to the model and then add it to the individual models. So we can create a new method here. So def as JSON. Do we call it as JSON? We can say def JSON data self and return id is self.id, title equals self.name, and external id equals this thing and self.id. There we go. And this event.json id, we can also have that as a separate one too. So def JSON id self, and then we'll just say return self.id. So we can move all of that stuff into here, and that means then in the view we don't need to do all of those loops. They'll just exist. They're functions rather than attributes, so we can just add things in here. So we can just add a property decorator onto each of these, which means that when you try to access the event.json data, it will call this function and return that stuff instead. Which means we can remove all of this as it's directly added to the events object and it's reusable. There is a debate about how much stuff you should attach to models and how big and chunky the model definition should become. I think it's a matter of taste as much as anything else. You can decide how much stuff is appropriate to stick on the model, how much stuff is appropriate to stick somewhere else. In general, the way that we tend to work is putting a lot of stuff on the model because it's reusable, and then keeping the view stuff a lot cleaner that way. If you wanted to move it to another place, you could. Hope you found this interesting, and see you tomorrow.